Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Death by Disney podcast. I'm your host, Adam, and on this podcast, I review absolutely every movie that Disney has ever released. And I release them on the podcast in chronological order, but I have a video. So the video on the YouTube, there won't be in chronological order because I've been making this podcast for a long time, but the videos are a recent thing. So it won't be in the same order, which gives you look at my hands, which gives you the ability to get different kinds of content at different times in different places, which I guess is the best way to go. I don't know. I don't know. Okay, enough rambling. Today we're going to talk about Johnny Tremain. And Johnny Tremain, I have notes here, I have notes there. Johnny Tremain is a 1957 Disney movie. It stars Luana Patton and Hal Stallmaster. And the little blurb is Johnny Tremain it's Hal Stallmaster, Luana Patton, and Jeff York. Johnny Tremain is drawn into the Revolutionary War and becomes a patriot, fighting to free the colonies from England. Along the way, he learns about life and about himself. So, hold on. I gotta get my notes here. I watched it last night, and just to get it out of the way, I gave it 7 out of 10 stars. And I said it's surprisingly good. Um, yeah, it really kind of draws your attention and keeps your attention, which is surprising for such a film. Um, the whole thing is about tariffs, though. So now Trump has gone in and said, oh, tariffs are this wonderful thing, but the entire Revolutionary War was begun because of tariffs, how the colonies did not want to pay the tariffs that the British were charging them on tea. And even there's a point in the movie where the businessmen of Boston, they want the harbor to be open again, so they say we'll pay this fee that you're asking of us, this fine. And the people in Boston were like, no, 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 we're going to do that. This is like a principle of ours. And basically, they were saying no, no taxation without representation, which is a pretty valid principle. But you have to also realize that they were colonies at the time. They were not like regular parts of England. And obviously, that's why the Revolutionary War happened, of course. But yeah, the main driving force was that they were English colonies, and before the American Revolution, there was the French and Indian War, and the French lost. Why did the French lose? They lost because the British were protecting British North America. So that's what the tariffs were to pay for. So it's not like they were being charged because the king wanted a new palace or something. They were being charged to, uh, you know, kind of pay back the money that they owed, or maybe that was borrowed to protect them. One thing that's pretty obvious, even I didn't watch the best quality movie of this, but even on the quality that I watched, one thing that's pretty obvious is that the backgrounds are painted. Like if you can tell, maybe I should get like a background that's not a real like a green screen. You can tell this is actually my living room. That's my couch. Like so you can just tell if something is painted or not generally, especially in old movies. No, that was pretty interesting. Another interesting thing is so Johnny Tremain oh, yeah, Johnny Tremain is presented as sort of this heroic figure, and of course the revolution is presented as heroic. So it's kind of interesting to take a look at the perspectives of different characters and how it's just these are terrorists, right? They are seducing the young to come and work together for a terrorist cause. But because it's the American Revolution, we're supposed to say, oh, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. You being a terrorist and you recruiting boys to fight for you, that's perfectly fine. Yeah. Um, but so what I mean by it's a good demonstration of that because the older men are kind of grooming the younger men to be these revolutionaries because the older men, like these older politicians, they're not going to die on the battlefield. It's going to be these young people. So that's pretty interesting. Although I said that um, this kind of gets a pass because it's about American Revolution, I think even now this film would be problematic for people in MAGA because it's clearly against the government, right? It's taking up arms against the government, which apparently is the whole point of the Second Amendment, but I guess it depends on what government you're fighting against. Yeah, so I don't think that the actual revolution would be popular now because it is a revolution, and revolutions are generally against the establishment. They're not conservative uh, things. Although interesting was that they there were slaves in this, and I was surprised by that, but they're not really commented upon. It's just you have maybe the filmmakers were saying something about that because they didn't actually have to have those characters be black, right? I'm sure that they were people who worked for rich people in North America who were not black, right? They were just servants. So maybe they're saying some kind of thing like I don't know. Maybe I'm imagining too much about that. I don't think that Disney had any ulterior motives apart from the how to say that. They didn't have any ulterior motives apart from the thing that Disney and this kind of propaganda that they grew up with. Although this is in the middle of the 1950s, so height of the Cold War. So also kind of dangerous to talk about revolution at the height of the Cold War, I would say. But yeah, they did mention slavery. They didn't mention it directly, but there were slaves. Um, Also, one thing that kind of it's not just this movie, but one thing that kind of has always bothered me about revolutionary movies is, especially about the American Revolution, is the American colonies are at most maybe about 100 years, maybe 80 years old at this point. 80, 90 years old. So every house is 80, 90 years old or younger, and everybody there is an immigrant. So probably there's only like two generations, one generation that's been born in America and raised in America, and that's the generation that created the revolution, right? But it's one generation. So these people are going to talk like their parents, and their parents were British. So why don't they have British accents? And I was like actually looking at this because I was curious. I was like, maybe the American accent started earlier, but no, the American Revolution is the thing that kind of pushed the American accent to start. I mean, it was going to start anyway, but it kind of gave it an impetus because, you know, we're different, we're not British, we're American. So it's really weird that you would have like these British characters and then these people who sound like they're from the 1950s. Uh, America, right? I mean, every film does that, but it's kind of weird. And I think if you had a film where they did speak more like each other, you would get the idea that this was not like some fight against some foreign land. This was a civil war, right? Like the people in the same families chose different sides, and the losers were like I don't want to say ethnically cleansed because they were the same ethnic group, but they were forced to leave and go to Canada and stuff and tarred and feathered and you know which is not as fun as it sounds. It doesn't sound very fun at all. But yeah, so that's interesting. Um, da 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 da. What else? Also, the the thing that I liked. the thing that I really liked about this movie is that even though it is pure American propaganda, it never dehumanizes the adversary, right? So there are British people in the film who are jerks, but the whole British establishment, they're not jerks. And uh, they kind of behave in a very natural way, and they don't want to fight with the Americans because, they're their cousins and brothers, and, they're all Englishmen at this point, right? So and also, this is like a generation before, earlier, they had a huge civil war in England. So probably that was in their mind that they didn't want to shed blood with their, their neighbors. So they're not portrayed in sort of an evil way, which I think more modern interpretations of this story do, of the story of the Revolution, kind of portray the British as these evil people, and they're not. They were just there doing their jobs, basically. Um, Another thing that I liked is, so I'm not I don't really know a lot about the history of the American Revolution, but this, it doesn't talk about the whole thing. It talks about the events in Boston that started the revolution, and so it's the Battle of Concord and Lexington. And so the first battle are, you have these British troops and they're lined up very professionally, and they say to the Americans who are lined up somewhat less professionally, like, leave, put down your guns, we don't want to hurt you. And the Americans are like, we're not going to put down our guns, we're going to fight for our rights, etc. They didn't say etc., of course. We're going to fight for our rights. But then uh, there's just a shot that goes off. And like, the camera is looking at the British, but you don't see a British person, a soldier firing. So it's unclear who shot first. And I really like that, actually, because, it's a movie 100, 200 years after the events happened. And they don't need to be historically accurate about that. A lot of other things about the movie are changed. So, yeah, I like how they don't know how it started, and then they start fighting. And the British are surprised that the Americans actually won the first battle, this little skirmish. And the Americans are also surprised that they won. And it also does a good job of showing how disciplined the British were, and how the actual war was won. Like, I don't know if it was actually won this way, but the stereotype is like, the American guerrillas were sniping at the British redcoats, and that's basically what they do. And the British retreat to Boston, and the British general says some great line like, yesterday we were in control of Boston, and now we are besieged on all sides. So it's great. That part's great. Um, yeah, so I would say quite surprised by how good this movie is, being a Disney live action movie from the 1950s. It's not great. It's not like the best movie you're ever going to see, but if you're going to see one movie, one live action Disney movie from the 1950s, I think this would be it. All right, other people had some other thoughts about it. So, what I like to do is I like to give you some trivia connected to the film, and also give you sort of what I call the voice of the people. So, positive review and a negative review. Today I'm going to start with the negative review. The title, Just Plain Awful. Spoiler, most of the characters were removed that played an important part in the book. Also, in real history, they didn't place lanterns in the Liberty Tree. It was in December when the tree would be bare. Spoiler warning, Rab does not die, which he does in the book. Also, Johnny wasn't in the thick of fighting at Lexington and Concord with Rab. Johnny had also only heard of the fighting. Adding on to that, there was no reason to make this into a family movie Doing that completely removes the point of this movie. It was meant to be about a teen's point of view in the war, not a family comedy movie. Overall, this is a waste of time. The book is way better than this junk. And that's from user 23502, a bunch of numbers from 2015. Um, are they correct? I don't know. I didn't read the book, so maybe it is quite different from the book, but I can understand why no one died in this movie because it's just about making the movie uh, better for making the movie not better, but making it more palatable for people who have the family to watch it. All right, now the positive review. 10 out of 10. One of Walt Disney's best live action movies. Disney Studios produced a plethora of memorable live action movies in the 1950s. This one ranks near the top of the list, along with 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. A very entertaining and in many ways a very accurate portrayal of the early days of our great nation. Walt died in 1966, well after the creation of Disneyland in Anaheim, his personal dream, but long before the entertainment empire we know today as, and then there's the website for Disney. I often wonder if Walt would appreciate what his legacy has become. I am thinking he would have much preferred to stick with Donald Duck and the historical perspectives portrayed in one of his later works, and that is from Rusher from 2015 as well. And I don't know Walt Disney. I never met him. Of course, he died before I was born. But Walt, the company he started, is one of the largest entertainment companies in the world. Why would he not like that? I mean, I think people have a weird idea like Disney would be horrified by some of the woke movies that his company is now putting out. I don't think he would be horrified about a woke movie. He'd be horrified if a woke movie didn't make any money. That's because that's what he was all about, right? So if a woke movie sold a bunch of tickets, he'd be great. If a horribly racist movie sold a bunch of tickets, he'd be great. And the fact that he owns the rights, his company owns the rights to Marvel and Pixar and a bunch of other intellectual properties, he'd be like, yeah, that's smart business. So, yeah, okay, I disagree with that review entirely, even though I do kind of like the movie. I would recommend it, as I said. 7 out of 10. Another thing that I would recommend, I have a podcast called the Everything and More Etc. podcast, which is sometimes on YouTube and is sometimes on other places you can check out podcasts. So please check that out as well. It's kind of like this, but it's shorter. And I talk about everything. All right, bye-bye.